In these next set of videos, we are going to talk about pickups. When we think about pickups, this could be anything from keys that we might need to open a door. This could be any kind of collectible you might have in your game. I know a lot of your game ideas are going to be about collecting a bunch of different objects. Those are all pickups. But specifically in this tutorial, we are going to make coins as our pickup. So we're going to have coins that our player can pick up, and this is going to increase their score. So let's just think about what we do need for our coins to be functional. Well, one side we're going to make a coin blueprint, and this BP is going to contain the mesh, it's going to contain the collider, and it's going to contain the code. And on the other hand, this coin is going to affect our player. So in our player, we are going to need a variable. This variable is going to hold the score. And when the player collects the coin, we want our score to go up. So we're going to need a function that is going to increase the score. Let's try and break this down into steps. So if I was to write out the pseudocode for this, it would be when player collides with coin. So when the player collides with the coin, we want to increase the score. And then we want to destroy the coin. And the reason we want to destroy the coin is because when we collect it, we don't want the player to keep collecting that same coin. So we'll increase the score first, and then let's just destroy the coin. Next, when we have this top area done, that should be a functioning coin for us. And this top area, this should be very familiar to us because this is basically how we've done the kill box. This is basically how we've done the bouncy pad. When the player collides with the kill box or the bouncy pad, we don't increase the score. Instead, we just respawn them or we bounce them. In this case, we're going to increase the score and destroy the coin. But that active, when we collide, just checking if it's the player, casting to the player, running a function, all of that's going to be the same. With that done, we'll have a simple coin done that should be that shouldn't be very interesting because, you know, it's just going to be a static object that they collect. So let's see if we can make it more interesting. We're going to learn two new concepts as we do this. We are first going to animate the coin. Normally coins in games rotate, so let's animate it. And we're going to do that using something called timeline. And next, as we increase the score, we're going to have this variable going up. And that's all well and good, you know, for our own purposes, we can print string it and we can see what our player score is. But that's not good for the player because, again, when our player is not going to see print strings. So let's add a simple UI that is just going to display the score. So now, in this video specifically, let's cover this top area because this, again, is going to be very familiar to everything we've done. So this shouldn't be very difficult. We should all have some idea on how to start doing this. And then let's take a single video, let's talk about timeline, and then in the final video, let's talk about the UI because there's going to be two new concepts for us. But let's move on to Unreal and begin. Just as with any kind of custom piece that we're going to build, we're going to make a new actor for it. I'm going to call this BP coin. Let's add it in here and let's just dock it. So I think a good shape for my coin would be a cylinder. And all I'm going to do is rotate it and scale it down. Now, technically, I don't need this default scene root, so I'm just going to drop this here. But you can see that Unreal has like rotated it back because our scene root doesn't have rotation, which means I would have to rotate this out in the level. I don't really want to do that. Sometimes, for some reason, once you Control Z it and do it again, Unreal just lets it work. I'm not really sure why this happens, but I just want to let you know, if you have the default scene root and it doesn't if it rotates it automatically when we make it the scene root, it is okay to have the default scene root. Because this worked for me, I'm just going to leave this as the scene root. If this does not work for you, it is perfectly okay to have this default scene root here. I just wanted to get that out of the way. But okay, we have this coin. This coin is our visual representation of, well, the coin. So I'm just going to give it a material. Again, give it whatever material you think is good. Let's just give it this grass material because we haven't been using that. So this is our coin now. Our coin needs a collider to go with it because this coin alone isn't going to run any collisions. Actually, in fact, this coin doesn't need any collisions whatsoever. So what I'm going to do is go here where it says block all dynamic, and I am just going to change it to no collision. We do not want any collision for this coin. We can even get rid of generate overlap events. While for this specific coin, because I'm using a cylinder, I could just use this as a collider. I just want to show you guys good practice. You will have a more complicated mesh in a real game when we're making it, and so we don't want to use that mesh as collider, especially for something just like a coin. Instead, let us add a collider to it. I'm going to add a box collision to mine and just scale it so it vaguely fits it. And so I think this fits it fine. It's not perfect, but again, for a coin, this is perfectly fine. Our player is not going to be barely colliding with their collectibles. They're just going to walk right through it. This box collider should be fine, and it's also very performant because it's just a box. And again, before I get into the player, let's just do the basic steps that we know we're going to have to do. On actor begin overlap, first I want to check if my actor has a tag. We want to check if it's the player, so I'm going to check if that's the player. Add a branch node, connect it up. If it's true, we want to cast to the player, so let's add our cast to BP first person character here. Set it as true. And now we have that basic template set up. We check if it's the player. If it is the player, let's cast to it. And then we want to run some function, but we haven't made that function yet, so let's go do that. So just real quick, looking back, what do we want to do when the player collides with the coin? First, we want to increase their score, so we need a variable now. We need a variable called score, and then we need a function to increase the score. Let's go add those two things. Now back in my first player character, I'm going to add a new variable. Let's call it score, and I'm going to give this score a type integer because my score is not going to be in decimals. My score is just going to go up by 1 every time the character collects a coin. So I don't need a floating variable because it's never going to be 1.5 or 2.5. An integer is just going to be perfectly fine for what I want. Make sure the default value is 0 for me because the player is not going to start with any score. And then just for our purposes, just so we can see things working, what I'm going to do is in my event tick, I'm just going to print the score. To make it look a little nicer, let us append it, and let's say score, and then let's print the score. So now it'll say score and then print the value. And because we're doing this in tick, normally again it's just going to fly down to prevent that from happening. Let's just give it a key. So now it's just going to replace the value that's already there. This is just for testing. When we get to the third video, we're going to make a UI. We won't need this anymore because we're going to make something our players can see. Okay, so let's compile this. And now when we start, our score should be 0. If I was to run this game, it should just say score 0. There's nothing really, there's no functionality to increase our score yet. So let's add that. I'm going to make a new function. I'm going to call it increment score. And here, all we want to do when we get this function fired, let's just take our score. Let's add to it. Let's add 1 to it. And then once we've added 1, we need to set our score back to that because this pin currently represents our score plus 1, and we need to store it back in our variable, so store it back in score. So now when we run increment score, we get our score, we add 1 to it, and then we just make the score go up by 1. Finally, in BP coin, we've already done all the boilerplate setup. When we collide with it, we just need to add, or I'm sorry, I called it increment score. Once we've incremented the score like we talked about, we don't want this coin existing for no reason. You know, I don't want my player to collect the coin multiple times. So I'm going to destroy actor. And just like that, we've basically made a coin. So you can see my coin, even though in the viewport it's showing me that it's rotated sideways, it really isn't here. So I'm just going to fix that real quick. That's kind of annoying for me. So I'm going to add a new scene component by just typing in scene. Make sure that scene is the root, and then just rescale everything to fit. Again, not sure why Unreal likes to do this to us, but good to know that, you know, it's always fixable. Okay, so that looks fairly back to normal again. And now I can just place my coin on my level. And let's just pull it out a bunch so we have a few coins all in different places. And let's see this in action now. So I'm going to hit play, run over my coin, and you can see my score has gone up by 1. That coin is gone. And that works just fine. Let's make it just a little bit nicer. Let's make a sound effect play when we collect the coin. I think that would be nice. It doesn't matter where you play the sound effect. I would suggest just playing it in the coin, because when we think about it, the coin is making the sound. But because we'll be calling this increment score, you could technically play the sound here. But I'm going to call this a coin sound, so I'm going to put it here. So play sound 2D. And find something that's good. I will just use this explosion sound effect. Awesome, that worked perfectly. And you can see how simple this was for us. We just followed the same steps for the bouncy pad. We followed the exact same steps as the kill box. All we did was make an actor, made sure we gave it a collision box that had overlap all, and on the begin overlap, we just first checked if it's the actor. We cast it to the actor, or our player character. If we first checked if it's the player, cast it to the player, and then we ran some function on it. In this case, we ran a function called increment score that just adds 1 to the score. And it's as simple as that. So I just want to show you one last thing here. This is perfectly fine. If you want to increment your score like this, this is perfectly fine. There is a shortcut for this in Unreal. Instead of getting the score, adding 1, and resetting it, we could delete all this, and we can just search increment int. And you can see it's symbolized by a ++. If we hover over it, we can read what it says. It just says add 1 to the specific value, then set it. What we were doing earlier was adding 1 to the specific value score and then setting it. This is just a shortcut for that. I don't want to confuse you guys. The other way is also fine. This is just a shortcut to do that exact same thing. And to just show us that it works, our score is going up as we collected it. We started with 0. Once I collect all 5 coins, we have a score of 5. So that works perfectly. Next video, let's start making this a little more interesting. Let's animate it using timeline. But that's all for this video. Thank you for watching.